Yeah, so the general premise here is asking, what if the Mad King is actually the father of Jaime and Cersei Lannister? Now, this isn't exactly an original fan theory of mine, but there's been some speculation about this subject from others in the fandom for A Song of Ice and Fire. And I want to focus on what this would actually mean overall for the narrative of the entire series and what implications it would have for many characters. And at the end of this video, I'll let you know why I think this theory is actually good or bad, and also whether I really even think it is true. First, I think we should try to see if this theory has any weight to even make it a worthwhile subject. So, what evidence is there that Aerys II actually fathered Jaime and Cersei? Well, there is reference that Aerys had suggested when Joanna and Tywin were married that he wished that the right of the first night still existed so that he could take Joanna Lannister to bed. At the least, this implies a desire from Aerys for Joanna, and while the timeline suggests that Joanna went back to Casterly Rock in 263 AC, and Jaime and Cersei were born later in 266, the available text suggests that Joanna seldom visited the capital after this, but seldom does not mean never. And when we look for evidence within the children, you could argue that Jaime and Cersei being twins is a commonality within the Lannister family tree, but this is easily explained, however, being that Joanna is actually a Lannister herself and cousin to Tywin. But the point is, if Aerys is the father, the commonality of twins in the Lannister bloodline would still apply with Joanna. Also, if you wanted to argue the looks of Jaime and Cersei, I think our author has demonstrated to us that appearances are not always proof of genetics. If the theory of R plus L equals J is to be believed, because Jon Snow certainly doesn't have purple eyes or silver hair, I think that kind of dismisses the idea that all Targaryens are inevitably going to look the same based on who their parents are. But I believe that the greatest support for Jaime and Cersei is actually found within Cersei. Cersei is very similar in her thinking as the Mad King when it comes to her foolish beliefs and growing paranoia that we gain from her chapters when she's introduced as a POV character in A Feast for Crows. I believe her obsession with wildfire cannot just be brushed away as nothing, and honestly, I do believe that she is on a path toward absolute cruelty or madness, especially after she's taken prisoner by the High Sparrow. I think something similar to her blowing up the Sept of Baelor in Game of Thrones is actually very likely to occur in the books, which is absolutely something the Mad King aspired to accomplish before he died. Plus Cersei's attraction to an incestuous relationship with Jaime, but also her desire for Rhaegar, who she believed she would be married to. Even in the present, she still fantasizes about what could have been. Now, I just want to give you a piece of weight to this theory, but again, this isn't about whether Jaime and Cersei are the Mad King's children, but more about what it means for the story and its characters if this theory were to be true. So let's get into that. So an interesting place to jump into is the children, and in Targaryen fashion, we have Cersei and Jaime having children together. So with the youngest, we have Tommen, who does seem sweet and innocent, and in the books, he's much younger than in the show, and has very little agency, even less than he does in the show. So he's kind of a non-factor in this, and like Joffrey, either way, they are bastard-born children, but being that they are of Targaryen blood, I think it is something to think about when we consider legitimacy. Orys Baratheon, the very first Baratheon, was originally believed to be Aegon the Conqueror's bastard brother, so I always find it funny that we're always looking at Cersei's children as bastards who have been falsely given the Baratheon name, a great house of Westeros founded by a bastard. But where we were, Tommen offers little interest even if he is Targaryen, and Myrcella is similar, but it is kind of a nice touch that she has been betrothed to Trystane Martell, which would reconnect a Targaryen to a Martell after the deaths of Rhaegar and Elia, which is the type of poetic parallel that our author George R. R. Martin likes to add in his writing, whether it's significant plot-wise or not. But the most obvious subject here with this Jaime and Cersei Targaryen idea is, of course, Joffrey. And if Aerys did father Jaime and Cersei, a lot of fans would point to Joffrey as someone who makes a lot more sense now. He's cruel and awful to everyone, and the torture is something he finds wildly amusing. Robert even expresses to Ned in the first book that Joffrey disturbs him, and I can't help but to think that with Robert's hatred for the Targaryens, that would actually make a lot of sense. But let's look at Jaime and Cersei's family further here with Tywin and Tyrion. I think you can point to Tywin as someone that disrupts this theory because he always was proud of Jaime and Cersei, and not necessarily proud like a parent, but proud because of the status that Jaime and Cersei could bring to House Lannister. Some say that there's no way Tywin would be able to overlook this, and that he'd know that the timing doesn't align for Joanna's pregnancy. I actually think Tywin would be oblivious. There's so many rumors about Jaime and Cersei's incest, and yet there's never any suggestion that Tywin is suspicious at all. So in pursuit of pushing the Lannister legacy, he could easily be in denial or oblivious all the same if the twins were not his. But what makes this far more fascinating to me is that Tywin's disdain for Tyrion would be that much more harsh. And this plays true whether Jaime and Cersei are Targaryens or not, but it gives this a little extra if they are Targaryens. Jaime and Cersei are nothing but lies and embarrassment for Tywin if anyone would ever know the truth. And yet, they offer traditional vanity and appearance for a great house like the Lannisters. However, Tyrion would be Tywin's only true-born child, his only heir. There is no via proxy legacy because his grandchildren sit the Iron Throne anymore. Ironically, Tywin's legacy would only grow as tall as Tyrion could take it, and Tywin has objectively treated Tyrion so terribly and even sentenced him to death. And for Tyrion, a character who feels so invalidated by the world and his father, actually has always been the heir to Casterly Rock. He's always been Tywin's legacy. This is actually kind of true, whether Jaime and Cersei were Targaryens or not. Now, for what this would mean for Jaime and Cersei would be even more interesting. For Cersei, it would explain so much about her character. The idea that the gods flip a coin for a Targaryen, and she's on one side with madness while Jaime is on the other trying to restore his honor. And in the story, I do believe Cersei is on a Mad Queen trajectory, and I do believe this would connect a ton with the Mad King for similar reasons, but it would explain so much of her paranoia and delusional thinking that leads to her foolish decisions. And for Jaime, I believe the idea that the Mad King ordered Jaime to kill his father Tywin when the Lannister army sacked the city, but Jaime chose to kill the king instead, would now create a very creative way for Jaime to carry out that order by killing the Mad King, who is actually his father. Jaime, of course, doing this to prevent the Mad King from burning the city with wildfire. Now, if we take that back to Cersei's obsession with wildfire, is it that crazy that George R. Martin would create this parallel confronting Jaime with that same decision to stop Cersei from burning the city with wildfire, and the weight of Cersei being a Targaryen burning the city with wildfire? I think these kinds of things are exactly how a theory like this can be considered a possibility. And the themes and the different parallels and the callbacks to things that occurred before the beginning of the books, I think would be a little bit more poetic. Now, I said I'd tell you if I even think this is a good idea or not. I think if this were a smaller story focused on less characters, yes, I think this would be really interesting. However, this isn't a smaller story, and adding in this theory really does make it a bit more convoluted. One of the fascinating things about the Targaryens is that there's so few of them. After Maester Aemon dies, we only know for sure that Daenerys is a Targaryen. Young Griff claims to be a Targaryen, and many believe that Jon Snow as well is a Targaryen, but we don't know for sure. Now, if there's a sudden surge of Targaryen characters revealed toward the end, I think that would actually water down the significance of a character like Daenerys, and if Jon is revealed to be Targaryen, I think it would really take away from the impact of that reveal as well. Another thing I think would be ruined is I don't think George R. R. Martin is trying to tell a story about how incest creates all of these problems. I think he's trying to make a bigger statement about power, and if Cersei does go mad, or even if Daenerys goes mad, attributing it all to an inherited family trait reduces the message about how power can corrupt or how people can corrupt their positions of power. But look, you tell me what you think of all this. If you made it this far, let me know by leaving the video a like, and for more videos, go ahead and click right here.